Welcome to the Explainer. So, is Donald Trump's foreign policy just chaotic and unpredictable, or is it something else entirely? A calculated, revolutionary strategy. Today, we're going to break down a really fascinating analysis that argues it's a deliberate plan to completely reshape the world as we know it. Okay, let's just dive right in. The source material we're looking at today makes a really bold claim. What we're witnessing isn't chaos, it's a plan. The author argues that Trump's ultimate goal is to completely dismantle the global system that's been in place for decades. So, let's start right there, with that central idea. The author contends that all these high-profile actions we've seen aren't just random events. Nope. They're all connected pieces of a much, much larger puzzle, what they call a revolutionary strategy that's already been set in motion. And according to the source, the proof of this strategy isn't some big secret. It's actually hiding in plain sight, specifically in a presidential order that was signed after a bunch of other big political moves. Now, the source doesn't go into all the details of the order, but it presents it as the absolute linchpin of the whole argument. You know, the key that supposedly unlocks the entire plan. But why, right? Why would a strategy this radical even be necessary? Well, the source gives a pretty clear justification. The current global system is fundamentally broken. In the author's own words, it has proven itself incapable in its essence. And this is the number the author uses to really make that point stick. The analysis highlights an order from Trump to withdraw the United States from 66 different international organizations. I mean, that's a massive, deliberate step towards tearing down that failing order. Now, the author really zooms in on one organization in particular, the United Nations. The source portrays the UN not as some neutral peacekeeper, but as a tool for what it calls left globalist forces. The argument is that the UN is basically useless when it comes to preventing wars, but it's very successful at pushing specific political goals, like mass migration into Western nations. So how exactly does the source claim these globalist forces get things done? Well, the analysis then gets into the specific methods it alleges are at the very heart of the agenda that Trump is trying to disrupt. At the very core of the author's argument is this concept, which is defined as a political trick. The claim is that these so-called left globalists operate by sticking to all the formal rules and laws on the surface, creating what the text calls a beautiful cover that lets them pursue their own interests on a shadow level. This quote from the text really captures the author's stark point of view. It's a heavy accusation, for sure. It suggests there's a deliberate and deceptive strategy being played out on the world stage, one that cares more about how things look than what's actually happening. And to illustrate this breakdown, the source points to a very specific event, the total collapse of the Minsk agreements. The text argues that the failure of this diplomatic effort, which was supposed to prevent war in Ukraine, actually represented the final point of destruction for the entire international system of rules. And this slide really gets to what is maybe the most controversial parallel the author makes. The text makes a direct claim that on an international level, Trump is continuing the work that Vladimir Putin started. In this view, both leaders are actively working to dismantle the exact same established global order. But according to this analysis, the strategy doesn't just stop at the water's edge. If the international order is successfully taken apart, the author predicts the final act of this revolutionary plan is going to take place right here on domestic soil. The source lays out a very clear two-step process. First, tear down the international system. And second, turn inward and dismantle what the author calls the similarly outdated system of, quote, checks and balances, right here within the United States. So, here's the crucial point. The author believes this isn't just another political fight. It's presented as a unique and really potent threat, with the suggestion that Trump might just be the first president in American history who has a real shot at pulling off such a fundamental change to the U.S. system. To really underscore the sheer size of this alleged plan, the source leaves us with one final and pretty telling historical comparison. Just 4 words: Kennedy failed at this. The source doesn't explain it any further, just leaving it to the reader to guess that other powerful presidents have tried a similar revolutionary change and failed. It's this final, cryptic detail that's meant to frame this moment as something with truly unprecedented consequences. And that really leaves us with the central question of this entire analysis. If the author's interpretation of a deliberate two-step revolutionary strategy is actually correct, what would be the true cost and the true outcome if, for the very first time in history, a president finally succeeded where all the others have apparently failed?